Am I the antagonist for not wanting a party thrown at our home hosted by people we don't get along with? So my sister and I had a falling out with my brother and his wife after they would go around telling family members made up awful stories, scenarios about us. There was a big confrontation and now we don't speak to them. They've always been troublemakers. My brother still randomly stops by my parents' house, which is where we live, but it's when we aren't home. Now my mother has always had a soft spot for him and will prioritize his feelings over ours, even though he treats her really badly. He yells at her, curses at her, and has even stolen from her in the past, but she always just says, "He's my son, I can't be mean like them," and continues allowing this behavior. Yesterday I found out that my brother and sister-in-law are now hosting a party here. I asked my mom why this wasn't brought up before and why she didn't consider how we would feel and what we were supposed to do while they're here. Now I don't have enough time to write out all the awful things they said about everyone, but more so about my sister. My sister-in-law would call her awful names behind her back and tell people awful and untrue things about her. I know if my sister is in the same room as my sister-in-law, there will be a big confrontation again. I asked my mother why she hadn't considered this since we live here. I know ultimately it's their home, but we do pay rent and weren't taken into account. There is close family being invited, so how are we supposed to either stay in our rooms or just not be around or leave until the party ends? It's just insane to me that she's okay with them hosting a party here when they've both said the most vile things about my mother as well, my sister-in-law especially. After our confrontation, my sister-in-law said she would never step foot in our house again and wants nothing to do with us. But now that they need something because they don't have a home to host a party in, they come asking my mother knowing she can't say no to him. I told my mother how this made us feel, and she just made it about herself and how much this affects her. I simply asked why there wasn't an alternative presented, park, someone else's house, etc. Since it's for their kid, I know my niece isn't at fault, but I truly feel an alternative solution was needed in this case. I again warned her that if they go through with this, knowing my sister, it will not end well. After I expressed how I felt, she literally stayed quiet and said nothing. I'm not sure what to do now. Am I the antagonist? It's clear that your mother values your sister's presence over your own. It's time to prioritize yourself and your sister's well-being. Start by clearing out your valuables and finding somewhere else to stay, maybe with your sister. Let your mother deal with the consequences of her actions, even if it means trashing her own house. Make it known to her that you will be actively looking for a new place to live because it's become evident that you will never be her first choice. Am I the asshole for unplugging my husband's Xbox in the middle of a game? I, 28-year-old female, got home from work this afternoon, and when I walked in the door, I saw that my husband, 27-year-old male, was gaming. He does work, he works from home, and this was after the workday. I said hello. He told me he's making dinner tonight. We chatted for a bit. I gave him a kiss and walked into the kitchen. When I walked into the kitchen, I noticed there was a pack of raw chicken sitting on the counter. The chicken was from Costco, so it is the bulk one that has 8 individual packs all connected. When I took a look, I noticed that my husband had cut 2 chicken breasts out of the pack for dinner, but left the rest sitting on the counter and proceeded to start a game. He didn't even cut the individual pack out of the group, so there were chicken juices leaking onto the counter that is right next to the refrigerator. I asked him why he left all of this raw chicken sitting on the counter and decided to go game before picking it up. He said because he forgot and kind of blew me off. If this was a one-time thing, fine. But we have had so many conversations about making sure he is taking care of priorities before beginning to game. It has been a struggle. I asked him to clean it up, he said he would, and I went in the room to change. When I came out of our room 15 minutes later, I noticed that the chicken was still on the counter. When I asked him why it was still there, he said he was still in the middle of the game and he would pick it up when he was done. I told him that he said that 15 minutes ago and who knows how long it had been out prior to me getting home. I asked again to go clean it up quick and put the chicken away. His response, "Aren't you full of sunshine?" I asked him what did you say, and he said did I stutter? So I did it. I unplugged his Xbox in the middle of the game, walked away, cleaned up the mess he made and put the chicken in the fridge. I understand that my actions were childish and that I could have cleaned it up myself from the beginning. But I was so frustrated to come home from work to him gaming. The house is a mess, which I didn't even bring up. Huge pack of raw chicken and chicken juice on the counter, and on top of that, the way he spoke to me. I just lost it. I do feel bad for losing my cool and deciding to unplug his game versus just walking away. But am I the asshole? I commend you for only unplugging the console. Leaving raw chicken on the counter is a recipe for disaster, not to mention the dripping juices. It's as if your partner expects you to clean up after them like a mother would. This dynamic is unhealthy and unsustainable in the long run. There's no excuse for being a jerk or not following through. It's important to have a conversation with your partner and make sure they fully understand the consequences of their actions. Am I the antagonist for saying my stepmom can't take back how she treated me? I am a 24-year-old female and I have always had a difficult relationship with my stepmom, who I will refer to as Cindy. Cindy came into my life when I was 13 and soon after she and my dad got married, she began asserting her parental role. While I appreciated her presence at my events, she also acted like she had equal authority in the house and could make rules. She played the bad cop role, always thinking I didn't have enough chores, that my grades were not good enough, or that I needed screen time limits. This led to numerous arguments. When I turned 17, I reached a breaking point. The lawn needed to be mowed before Sunday, and my dad said he would do it on Saturday afternoon. So, I made plans to hang out with my friends that day. While I was out, Cindy messaged me and told me I should not have let my dad mow the lawn because he had a tiring week. She insisted that I would have to do it, which was typical of her behavior. I refused and stayed out with my friends. When I returned home, she was furious and tried to ground me. This escalated into a big argument where I told her she wasn't my mom. My dad ended up stepping in and I wasn't grounded, but he asked me to try and get along with Cindy. However, it didn't matter because Cindy decided she was done. She stopped acknowledging me, and we became roommates who despised each other. I wasn't even allowed to eat the food she bought, even basic things like bread. The atmosphere was constantly tense, and I ended up spending more time at my mom's apartment until I went to college. Since then, we haven't spoken. Cindy never attended any events where I met up with my dad. That changed when my fiancé and I announced our engagement. Although the wedding is still more than a year away, Cindy sent me a lengthy text congratulating me and asking for all the wedding details so she could help plan. She inquired about dress fittings, an engagement party, and even requested to make a speech at the wedding, essentially asking to fulfill all the mother of the bride roles as if the past 11 years never happened. I chose not to reply until my dad contacted me to ask why I hadn't responded. I was honest with him and expressed that I am uncomfortable with this situation. I am happy to have Cindy attend the wedding as my dad's guest, but I do not want her to have any role in the wedding. We are not even having a head table because I don't want to sit with her or separate her from my dad, since she previously emphasized that she is not my mom. This has caused a major conflict. My dad says Cindy is deeply hurt, and he is even contemplating not attending the wedding because she doesn't want to go. I believe that Cindy cannot undo what happened in the past, and at the very least, she should have apologized before reaching out like this. My mother and my partner are supportive of me, but I have received messages from several people on my dad's side calling me an for punishing Cindy. This criticism is getting to me. So, am I the asshole? It's clear that Cindy has been playing the victim card and trying to manipulate your father into prioritizing her over your own mother. You have every right to set boundaries and decide who is involved in your wedding. It's not about punishing Cindy, but rather acknowledging the role your mother should rightfully have in these events. Your father can choose to attend with Cindy as his +1, but ultimately, it's your day, and you have the final say. Congratulations on your upcoming wedding and best of luck. Am I the antagonist for announcing my adoption publicly on social media, knowing I hadn't told my bio mother? I, 19-year-old male, was recently adopted through adult adoption. I had many reasons for wanting this, but it's important to understand the background. My biological father was married before he met my biological mother. He had 3 daughters with his first wife. When the younger 2 were still babies, his first wife became ill. For 5 years, the oldest of the 3 took care of her sick mother and raised her younger sisters, all while being a child herself. During this time, my bio father started heavily drinking and abandoned his family when they needed him the most. 3 months after his first wife died, the 3 girls were taken away from him. Due to concerns that the oldest daughter was unwilling to let someone else parent her younger sisters, they separated her from them, hoping to find families for the younger 2. The younger 2 were eventually placed with a long-term family, but the oldest daughter was moved around. My biological parents met, and my bio father decided to regain custody of his oldest daughter. My bio mother was aware of the situation, including my bio father's alcoholism, his history of losing and abandoning his children, and his lack of regular communication with them even though he had visitation rights. Despite this, they decided to have me. From the beginning, the oldest daughter resented me, and I remember my bio father asking her why she didn't show me the same love she showed her other sisters. She would question, why would I love it? Why would I show it affection? She and my bio father had frequent arguments, and she ran away often. I've also heard that she got into trouble in attempts to take her sisters away from their foster family. My parents were the only people who were truly there for me, even though they had their own mess going on. My biological parents only got married a few years after I was born, and there's a photo from their wedding that clearly reflects the oldest daughter's negative feelings towards me. Over time, my bio father began drinking excessively, blaming his fights with his daughter for his alcoholism. My bio mother would act as if I didn't remember anything, yet she would repeatedly mention that I had 3 sisters. She always denied that it had any impact on me. Fortunately, I had my parents, and at 15 I unofficially moved in with them. Eventually, they agreed to adopt me as an adult, on the condition that I went to therapy for a year to ensure my decision was healthy and not motivated by unhealthy reasons. A couple of weeks ago, the adoption became official, and I announced it on social media. This deeply upset my bio mother, and my extended family on her side were furious with my mom for betraying her sister. They were also angry at me for making a public announcement. Am I the asshole here? It's clear that your parents failed to provide the proper emotional support and treatment when you were younger. leading to unresolved bitterness. It's important for children to be able to express their feelings and criticize their upbringing without fear of backlash. Your aunt's attempt to gaslight you and make you deny the damage she caused is unacceptable. You deserve to find happiness and build your own chosen family. That being said, I do feel sympathy for the oldest of the girls in this situation. It must be difficult for her to comprehend and navigate through this complex family dynamic. It's also worth mentioning that while your bio mom and extended family may have been upset, regardless of whether you gave them a heads up, it's understandable why they would feel hurt and betrayed. However, considering the circumstances, it seems like there was no perfect solution, and you were placed in a no-win situation. Stay strong and don't let their feelings diminish your own journey of healing and finding joy. Am I the antagonist for telling my husband we already have 2 babies and can't care for his grandma as if she's our third? My husband's grandma has been in and out of the hospital since December due to health complications from back surgery. This isn't the first time she's had surgery or been injured in the 8 years that I've been with my husband. Each time my husband, his mother, and I have been her caretakers. It's important to note that she is not my mother-in-law's mother. My father-in-law is an alcoholic narcissist who only cares about the money he will receive when his mother passes. This recent surgery was more extensive than the previous ones, requiring a laminectomy and fusion. Despite her inability to walk or use the bathroom on her own, she was only in the hospital for 3 days after the surgery. My husband and I both work full-time and have a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old, so we tried to convince her to go to a rehab facility instead of relying on us as caregivers. My mother-in-law doesn't work but lives nearby and often cares for her other son's child. However, she refused to listen and heavily relied on my husband and mother-in-law. She would call my husband at all hours of the night, asking him to come over because she was scared or in pain. Initially, I was understanding, but it put a lot of strain on us since our children don't consistently sleep through the night. After about a week, she started asking my mother-in-law to stay the night at her house so she wouldn't be alone. However, my husband's sister currently lives with her while she attends college to pursue a medical degree. This continued for a few more days until we, along with her doctor, convinced her to enter a rehab facility. While in rehab, her calls to my husband became more frequent and dramatic. This is when I started to feel frustrated. Around mid-January, I expressed my frustrations to my husband, and he shared them but felt obligated to go whenever she called. Eventually, he told his grandma that he had a full schedule and couldn't be her caretaker. Against the advice of many nurses and doctors, she went home after 3 days in the facility. My mother-in-law then resumed staying at her house. However, she had to be readmitted to the hospital multiple times due to issues with wound drainage, difficulty walking, and increased pain. Yesterday, she was admitted to the hospital again, and after some tests, it was discovered that she has a bone infection. About 30 minutes ago, she had a nurse call my husband from her cell phone, demanding that he come to the hospital because she woke up scared. I became extremely angry and told him to let her know that I will not visit her in the hospital for this stay, and our children won't either. I explained that we already have 2 babies, and she is acting like a third one that we can't and won't care for right now. He left for the hospital, and predictably, our 1-year-old woke up, teething as a hassle. So, am I being unreasonable in this situation? It sounds like you're in a tough situation where you feel overwhelmed and frustrated. It's important to remember that the lady in question isn't your grandmother, so focusing on the fact that you need more support from your husband is a position of strength that you can discuss. Complaining about his grandmother might make your husband defensive, as he loves her and wants to be supportive. Instead, keep the focus on what isn't being taken care of at home with your kids and ask your husband for a plan to ensure everyone is supported. Would I be the antagonist if I continue with my plan to skip college despite my parents and twin sister wanting us to go together? My twin sister Thali and I are identical twins. We're also the oldest of our siblings with 2 younger sisters and 2 younger brothers. Thali and I have been presented as a pair since birth. We were dressed the same, named very similarly, we have the exact same middle name, our hairstyles for several years were the same. It was all just the same. We even did extracurricular activities and our parents fought for us to always be in the same class. And we also share a bedroom. Thali loved it. She identifies heavily with being a twin. She's also got a very strained relationship with our younger siblings because to her, only I exist. I, on the other hand, have a better relationship with all my other siblings, and Thali is the one I struggle with the most. I never get any real space from her. There's literally nowhere I have that's just mine. When I started trying to gain my own identity, our parents became stricter about going to friends' houses and we both need to go. Thali will never let me go without her either, and if she even suspects I'm doing something without her, she tells our parents who demand I take her. I excelled in art, and my art teacher wanted to put me forward for a competition running a few hours from us. But because Thali wasn't considered good enough at art, my parents refused to give their consent for it. Did I mention we take the exact same classes because my parents and Thali just waited for me to decide my electives, and then they got her into the same ones? One thing that has been clear since we were 10 is that we were expected to go to college together. The same college. We're expected to be roommates and request a roommate exchange for each other if we don't naturally get paired together. It was always my nightmare. For me, turning 18 is the time I want to spread my wings as Thea instead of just continuing on as part of Thea and Thalia. I never told my parents, but my plans are not college. They assume it still is after graduation, but I have been talking to my guidance counselor about other options. I'm thinking I might move out after my 18th birthday in June and work for a while to gain that independence, and maybe after a year I could do something. I never told my family, for obvious reasons, but my parents ended up getting an email from our temporary guidance counselor, not the one I talked to, with more info on the options I had discussed with the regular counselor. It also mentioned my not applying to college. My parents were furious, and they told me to get on the applications and apply before it's too late. Thali heard and was so upset. She started to cry and asked me why I was trying to leave her. She tried to find out what exactly I was considering, but I refused to answer more specifically. My parents called me deceptive and manipulative and told me I'll be awful if I continue going against the plan everyone else wants. Would I be the asshole if I continue? Not the antagonist, but your parents sure are. I feel for your sister, but you both need to learn to be apart. So many things to not do together. Must be stifling. You desperately need some space, and the way your parents have treated you seems very damaging to both you and Thali. You're being controlled and manipulated, and she is not becoming a fully developed adult. Honestly, I'd have shaved my head by now to make sure I look different. I'm sorry they're all being difficult. Moving out might be a good idea. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.